We had been dealing with the cryptogams by now. Now we are going to understand phanerogams. When I say phanerogams, that means I am referring to those plants which have acquired the seed habit. And the first of phanerogams is the gymnosperms, and it is very good to know that there are only two types of phanerogams. That means we are left with only one type of further classification of plants. Now this is the first one, and what we have over here, the first peculiar characteristic is that we are going to observe the seed habit over here. And as we are advancing in the classification, we are moving towards the plants which are highly advanced. What we see in case of gymnosperms is that the plant body is organized and divided, well organized rather, into roots, woody parts like stem and vascular bundles. There are needle-like leaves which could be present. So this is what we see in the plants. Now seed habit is also there, and one thing is absent, that is flowers are absent. Okay, they do not have flowers, and if we have to understand the name, gymno means naked and sperm means seed. So these are the plants which have naked seeds. That means they would not be jacketed inside the ovary. Now because they have transitioned to seed habit and they do not have flowers, why the seed habit has come? Because in order to avoid the availability of water or the need of water, that is always a prerequisite for transfer of the gametes, male and female gametes, to bring out the fertilization, that was required in the plants which were of the lower cases. Over here in the case of gymnosperms, what we have is that we don't need that water for transfer of gametes, rather the plant has adapted to the seed habit, or it has adopted the seed habit, which enables it to make possible for the fusion of gametes without the utility of water. So that is seed habit. In case of roots, they have well developed roots which are present way beneath the soil. They have fungal associations known as mycorrhiza which are present, which enable their plants to grow in a well manner. They have stem that is woody. You might have seen the plants which are present in snowy areas, the gymnosperms, like you might have heard about conifers. So basically those conifers are gymnosperms only. They have woody stems, that is they have a well developed xylem and phloem present in them. One thing you have to remember, that this stem has both xylem and phloem apart from other tissues, and the phloem is devoid of companion cell while the xylem is devoid of vessels, and this shortcoming enables them to conduct water to great heights. You might have heard about the plant known as giant squaw. It is a gymnosperm only, or if not giant squaw, you might have heard that there are huge redwood trees which are present in American deserts and North America and Canada. Deserts, I said deserts, sorry, it's not deserts though, those forests. So those are huge redwood trees as tall as 400 feet. You can very well imagine 40 to 50 story plants. It is totally a huge organism to be present and on earth, and they have such a great height, and the conduction of water through the roots, it takes place by the xylem, which does not have vessels present in them. It might baffle you for now because I think you are not aware of plant physiology by now, but when we study plant physiology, you have to remember that gymnosperms have xylem. Xylem is a plant tissue for conduction of water, and it does not have vessels, while phloem is also a plant tissue which is for conduction of food material which is being formed in the leaves. It does not have companion cells. These two characteristic features you have to remember. And this only, we were talking about vascular bundles. These are vascular bundles only. So inside this inside the plant we have roots, we have stem, we have vascular bundles, and there is one feature that is known as cones that is present. In your trip to mountains or somewhere in hilly areas, you might have seen that trees like pinus, they have cones present in them, and those cones at times you might have eaten chilgozas, which are a dry fruit which are extracted from pine cones. Those are gymnosperm seeds that we consume. Those chilgozas, it is one of the most expensive dry fruits, and India is a producer of that dry fruit, and it comes from Afghanistan, if you might have heard. Those are extracted from the pinus cones. Now what are pinus cones? Cones are basically sporophylls. Now the terminology somehow resembles that of the pteridophytes. What would be a sporophyll? And over here when I would talk about sporophylls, there would be two types of sporophylls. One would be microsporophyll and the other one would be megasporophyll. Now, if you might have paid attention to your lower classes syllabus, you might have heard about the term ovule. Okay, so when we say that we are going to have seeds, we are going to have this ovule present. Now, one by one we are going to understand. These were the basic characteristics. One by one we are going to understand how the alternation of generation takes place in gymnosperms, and with that we are going to know many characteristic features of this particular classification of plants. Now, what are sporophylls? What spores would be formed? First of all, the gymnosperms. In the gymnosperms, the plant body is typically a sporophyte. Whatever you are seeing in the plant, the entire huge tree, that is a sporophyte which is diploid. And the gametophyte is highly reduced to the stage of gametes only. Okay. Now, gametophyte would be highly reduced, that single celled or double celled, not more than that. What is the significance of these sporophylls and the cones? First of all, you have to see that over here we see the distinguishing factors. We will have the seed habit, and for seed habit we need to have an ovule. For in an ovule there would be the female gamete. So the female gamete lies inside the ovule, and this type of fertilization which would take place in the case of these gymnosperms, it would be oogamous type. Now when I say oogamous type of fertilization, that means the male gamete would come to the female gamete. Female gamete would have stored lot of food material inside it. The male gamete would go and the female gamete would be larger in size, and that is present inside the ovule. This ovule later on forms the seeds. Okay, one by one let us see what would happen. The fertilization is oogamous type. The sporophyte will have some part of it which would undergo meiosis. It would give rise to the gametes. Now let's see where that meiosis takes place. There are sporophylls which are present, and they are compacted in the form of cones. You might have seen these cones in your journey to hilly areas or somewhere or else. People paint it in their childhood and keep in their houses. This is what a cone looks like. It has many sporophylls present in it. Now what were sporophylls? They were those leaves which bear the spores. Now what would be the spores? There are few sporangia which are present in the base of this sporophyll. Each base of this sporophyll is having sporangia present at the base, and inside this sporangia, if there are male gametes, it would be microsporophyll, and if there are female gametes which are present, it would be megasporophyll. Now this microsporophyll will have microsporangia. What are microsporangia? They are the sites where the gametes would be formed, and there would be megasporangia. Alright, inside the microsporangium there would be formation of male gamete known as pollen grain. This pollen grain by agency of wind would go to the ovule where the female gamete known as egg is present. Now the fertilization takes place and the seed is formed, where we have zygote, and the seed formation takes place in the Megasporangium itself. Alright, Megasporangium, which is present on the Megasporophyll. This Megasporophyll forms the female cone on the plant, while this Microsporophyll, it forms the male cone. Male cone is, as the name suggests, it is microsporophyll, so it would have smaller leaves and the cone would look smaller, while in the case of megasporophyll, the cone would be larger in size. So this is all about that you have to understand. In case of gymnosperms, the microsporophyll would be 2n, microsporangium would also be 2n, pollen grain would be n. This is the male gametophyte, and ovule is the female gametophyte, which gives rise to the gamete known as egg. This pollen grain is going to give rise to the male gamete. Okay, and rest of the ploidy is similar in each case. So this is what we have to understand in the case of gymnosperms, how the life cycle of gymnosperms takes place. It is alternation of generation that is present, and apart from this we have to come across few examples. You have seen the Christmas tree that is present in every house nowadays as an ornamental tree. That is Orocaria, that is also a type of gymnosperm. Then we have example of pinus, then we have example of cedar, then we have there are many conifers which are present. So we have three further divisions, or you can say classifications. This gymnosperms can be divided into Coniferopsida, Cycadopsida, and then Netopsida. As I told you before, this last one is mostly comprising of living fossils which are present on earth. Cycadopsida, as I told you, these are present in hilly areas. This class of gymnosperms is present in hot areas as well, and the example happens to be cycas and Coniferopsida, as the name tells, the conifers which are present on the hills. So this is all about gymnosperms. There is fertilization which is taking place, alternation of generation is present, but the gametophyte is highly reduced. It is totally dependent on the sporophyte, and sporophyte is the main plant body. The cones that are visible, they are bearing the sporophylls, which are compressed, and they are present in the form of a cone. These compressed cones, they are going to have sporangium, respectively micro and mega, if they are male and female gametes, and if they are male and female cones. And if the male cone is going to give rise to the pollen grain, which is the male gametophyte, the female cone will have the ovules, which happens to be the female gametophyte. I'm sorry if I'm mixing them. The male cone would have male gametophyte, and the female cone would give rise to the female gametophyte, which are pollen grain and ovule respectively. Now I have said it correct, you cannot question me now. And these both these gametophytes, they are going to give rise to the gametes, that means with the cell which is actually going to undergo fertilization. When the fertilization takes place, there is formation of zygote, and there is another thing which is present, that is endosperm. There is an endosperm which gives the nutrition to the zygote, and both zygote and endosperm form the seed. This thing you have to remember. What is a seed? Seed is zygote plus endosperm, which has developed from the ovule. Endosperm is nothing but the nutritional, you can say, storehouse or reservoir for the zygote. Then the zygote develops. The seed is very tasty. If we talk about the Pinus roxburghi, which gives the dry fruit known as chilgose, and we have the seed which would fall down, which would germinate and give rise to a new plant. Over here we are not going to find the flowers, and that is why the name is gymnosperms. So this is all about the first phanerogam, that is the gymnosperm. Next we are going to talk very briefly about angiosperms. Why very briefly? Because most of our syllabus in the higher classes is dedicated to understanding the reproduction in the angiosperm. So we are going to see the characteristic features only.